Welcome back to our channel, Best to Watch. Today we are here to talk about the top 10 scariest horror movies. But before we get started, subscribe to our channel to never miss any updates. So without any further delay, let's get started quickly. For those who are bored due to lack of interest every day, the scariest horror movie is recommended just for you guys. There have been various types of horror movies in the past, from Japanese movies and Western movies, from a little scary to traumatic ones. There are also types such as panic horror, where classic dolls appear, and psychologically scary panic horror. Introducing popular recommended rankings and how to choose such scary horror movies. Which is the scariest movie in history? There is a science to determine this. Below mentioned are the scariest movies ever. Let's take a look into them. The film industry has been making horrifying films for over a century since the pioneer Georges Méliès founded The House of the Devil. From that moment on, Hollywood has been trying to find the perfect recipe for the scariest movie. The best materials need to include healthy suspense, spooky spots, and most importantly, the moment the audience pops out of the skin. Besides, scientists have conducted a survey to identify the most horrifying movies ever released, based on the viewer's heart rate. As a result, these are said to be the scariest movies you can watch. Let's go. The Babadook, Monsters Lurking in the Home. The Babadook has become one of the most legendary horror movies in recent years. The giant Babadook does not hide in spooky places, but hides in the homes of a single mother, Amelia, and her son Noah, so it acts as a scary movie. Our home should be our sanctuary, but for Babadook with lots of jump scare moments, including the horrifying scene where Amelia first noticed that Babadook was really in her house. The Babadook represents depression. Amelia's husband reconciles many of her feelings surrounding her sadness and her resentment of unexpectedly falling into a single mother as she died in a car accident while being taken to the hospital during labor. A Quiet Place, tension from start to finish. Many horror fans wouldn't consider A Quiet Place a part of the genre, but when it comes to keeping audiences on the edge of their seats, few movies have done better. Viewers often find themselves holding their breath and doing their best to remain quiet while watching John Krasinski's 2018 film. And while there are some genuine startled moments, the real terror comes from the fear of the family itself when they accidentally make a sound. It's a metaphor for what family is all about and the lengths you go to as a parent to protect your children. A Quiet Place focuses on a single family doesn't sound political on the surface, but in fact the idea of the American family is at the center of all ideological debates in our nation. The Conjuring, based on true events. The Conjuring was the most horror franchise in history, as it was the only two franchises in the top 20 movies, according to a Science of Scare study by Broadband Choices. The first movie, simply called The Conjuring, was released in 2013, but now has 2 sequels and some spin-offs. Everyone uses normal tricks to scare viewers, but perhaps the scariest thing about these films is that they are based on the actual abuse of paranormal researchers Ed and Lorraine Warren. What is the story of The Conjuring? In 1970, paranormal researchers and demon scholars Lorraine, played by Vera Farmiga, and Ed, played by Patrick Wilson Warren, were summoned to the homes of Karen, played by Lily Taylor, and Roger, played by Ron Livingston Perron. Perron and his 5 daughters recently moved to a remote farmhouse. There, the supernatural beings are known. Symptomology is relatively benign at first, but the event quickly escalates in a horrifying way, especially after the Warrens discover the eerie history of the house. Paranormal Activity found footage. In the late 90s, the Blair Witch Project began the so-called found footage movie epidemic. These were films pretending to be true stories by using what was claimed to be real footage of supernatural events. One of the most successful was the Paranormal Activity. It consisted primarily of CCTV coverage from inside a couple's home, which was plagued by ghostly events. Due to the striking special effects, the CCTV footage looked real, and the leading actors often didn't know what would happen and had to improvise. The Ring, truly terrifying villain. Japan is famous for its impressive horror films, and Hollywood remakes have not always been successful. The Ring's remake starring Naomi Watts was in many ways scarier than the original thanks to jump scares, but the bad guys were the same in both films, the creepy black hair hanging on their faces. Young women who pursue their goals and their death. Samara's first appearance on television is one of the most memorable horror movies scenes to date. Insidious plot twists. James Wan could easily claim that he had taken over from Wes Craven as the new king of horror thanks to the successful Thor, Conjuring, and Insidious film franchise. The first 2 depend on the blood, internal organs, and jump scare moments, but Insidious is a little more mature. There are still scary scenes enough to set up a pulse race. The best thing about Insidious is its fascinating storyline. It offers some plot twists that are out of place for big-budget Hollywood thrillers. The best thing about Insidious is that it wants to scare you. It's very effective. Insidious was horrifying, and it was for a while as the mainstream scary movies had quite a good horror when it was released. Beautifully used jump scares, tension, and atmosphere to create truly scary moments. The Descent, claustrophobic terror. The Descent is a different horror movie. In the movie's cave-exploring heroine looks scary at first for very normal reasons, but only finds the supernatural trapped in the depths of the earth. This is definitely not a movie for people with claustrophobia. Scenes shot with night vision add a layer of horror, especially if the audience can see predators in another world that the girl herself cannot see. Neil Marshall's 2005 cult horror gem The Descent's 6 female cast plunges into the sadness without a safety line, scraping smooth walls for purchase far worse than anyone imagined. Sadness is not an emotion, it is neither a long-lasting illness nor a burden to carry. Sadness is a labyrinth of blood and stone. The tragic caving, which makes up the bulk of the movie, begins as a friend of the main character, Sarah, attempts to separate her from a year of depression in the wake of the death of her husband and her daughter. However, when the women gather for a drink the night before, there's a tense atmosphere. Once close friends are alienated from each other and dissatisfied with the scale of Sarah's suffering. The expedition aims to uplift Sarah's spirit, which begins with her dishonesty, avoidance, and emotional withdrawal. As the woman enters the cave system, the film reveals choking passages and yawning crevices, oppression where the mind and body are crushed. A Nightmare on Elm Street, classic slasher movie. Slasher movies were the heyday of the 1980s when the Nightmare on Halloween and Elm Street franchises debuted. The adversaries were the protagonists of these films, not the victims. On Elm Street, there was an ominous Freddy Krueger haunting by a horrifying teenage dream. Krueger's exploits may have been inspired by a horrific cliché, but the idea that they couldn't escape the villains that could kill you during your sleep was expected to petrify in 1984. Hereditary, terrific acting. The scariest thing about Netflix horror flick Hereditary, like The Conjuring and Paranormal Activity, is that it feels very normal and realistic. This is a situation where all of us can find ourselves. Toni Collette's excellent acting skills are also important for Hereditary, as her reaction to the crazy events happening around her makes the film so irritating. The first shock may not come until 30 minutes after the movie, but it's worth the wait. Sinister, a good old-fashioned haunting. The 2012 movie Sinister topped the Science of Scare survey, making it scientifically the most horrifying movie of all time. Ethan Hawke plays a crime writer who moves his wife and children to a house where a bloody murder took place years ago. It's not surprising that families are scared of the things they hit at night right away. According to a survey, viewers had an average heart rate of 86 beats per minute while watching Sinister, while a resting heart rate of 65 beats per minute, but at the most horrifying moments of the movie, it had risen to a height of 131 beats per minute. This was all about it, and on that note, that's all for today's video. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, make sure you hit like and subscribe to our channel Best to Watch. Let us know your thoughts in the comments section.